Every morning, 300,000 cars drive across the George Washington Bridge. They go from New Jersey to New York. They go from New York to New Jersey. Mothers drive their kids to school. Truck drivers carry food to stores. Business people rush to work. Everyone is in a hurry. The bridge is beautiful. Two giant towers reach into the sky. Thick steel cables hold everything up. The bridge is so wide that 14 cars can drive across it side by side. On busy days, that's exactly what happens. But here's what nobody thinks about while they're driving. Here's what nobody talks about while they're stuck in traffic, checking their phones, drinking their coffee. 15 men died building this bridge. Not one or two, not three or four. 15. Their names were John Ryan, Frank McCardle, Otto Sondergaard, Joseph McCaffrey, Andrew Johnson, Michael Moran, Charles Murphy, William Smith, Thomas Kelly, Peter Olson, James Sullivan, Edward Larson, Anthony DeLuca, Frank Kowalski, and Robert Henderson. Real men, men with families. Men who woke up one morning, kissed their wives, told their children they'd be home for dinner, and never came back. The dark story of the George Washington Bridge isn't hidden in some dusty archive. It's right there under your wheels. Every single day, hundreds of thousands of people drive over a workplace massacre. They drive over the spot where John Ryan fell 600 feet from the top of the North Tower on July 15, 1929. They drive over the place where Frank McCardle got crushed between two steel beams on October 3, 1930. They drive over the exact location where Otto Sondergaard's safety rope snapped on April 12, 1931. This is the dark story of America's most famous bridge. This is the dark story of 15 men who became ghosts before the bridge even opened. This is the dark story of how we celebrated a great achievement while 15 families cried at 15 funerals. Why does this matter? Why should you care about 15 men who died almost 100 years ago? Because 300,000 cars cross that bridge every single day. That's 109 million cars every year. In the 93 years since the bridge opened in 1931, more than 10 billion vehicles have crossed it. 10 billion trips over 15 graves. And here's the really dark part. Most people don't even know their names. Think about it, you know the name George Washington. The bridge is named after him, and he died in 1799, more than 130 years before the bridge was built. Everyone knows that name, but John Ryan. Frank McCardle, Otto Sondergaard, who remembers them? The George Washington Bridge cost $59 million to build. That's about $1 billion in today's money. The chief engineer, Othmar Ammann, became famous. The bridge made the cover of every magazine. President Herbert Hoover came to the opening ceremony. Reporters called it the eighth wonder of the world. But here's a question. Here's the question nobody wanted to answer in 1931, and nobody wants to answer now. Was it worth it? Was the bridge worth 15 lives? Would you cross that bridge if you knew your father died building it? Would you smile in the opening day photos if your husband was at the bottom of the Hudson River? This is the dark story of progress. This is the dark story of what we're willing to sacrifice for convenience. This is the dark story of 15 men who gave everything so that you could save 20 minutes on your morning commute. Your question, if you could go back in time and talk to those 15 workers on the morning they died, what would you tell them? Would you warn them, or would you let them keep working because the world needed this bridge? October 1923, Manhattan. A 44-year-old Swiss engineer named Othmar Ammann sits at his desk. He draws bridges. That's his job. He's been drawing bridges for 20 years. But this bridge is different. Ammann draws two towers. Each tower is 604 feet tall. That's as tall as a 60-story building. He draws cables. 4 main cables, each one holding 26,474 wires. He draws a roadway. The roadway is 4760 feet long. That's almost a mile. This bridge will connect New York and New Jersey. This bridge will cross the Hudson River. This bridge will be the longest suspension bridge in the world. The dark story starts right here, right at this desk, because Ammann knows something. He knows that bridges kill workers. He knows that every great bridge in America has a body count. The Brooklyn Bridge, finished in 1883, killed at least 20 workers. The Manhattan Bridge, finished in 1909, killed 5. The Williamsburg Bridge, finished in 1903, killed 10. Ammann knows the numbers. He studied every bridge. He knows what happens when men work 600 feet above a river. But here's the dark story of the vision. Ammann decides the bridge is more important than the risk. He decides that connecting two states is worth the danger. He decides that progress requires sacrifice. On October 15, 1923, Ammann presents his plans to the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. The Port Authority is the government agency that will pay for the bridge. They love Ammann's design. They approve it immediately. The estimated cost is $59 million. That's $1 billion in 2024 dollars. The estimated construction time is 4 years. The estimated number of workers needed is 1,200 men. Nobody estimates how many will die. Meanwhile, across the Hudson River in Fort Lee, New Jersey, families are struggling. The year is 1923. America is booming. The stock market is going up. Rich people are getting richer, but working-class families, families with fathers who do hard labor, are barely surviving. A construction worker in 1923 makes about $5 per day. That's $85 in today's money. A family of four needs about $1,500 per year to survive. That's $25,500 in today's money, so a construction worker is making just enough. No savings, no emergency fund. If he gets hurt and can't work, his family starves. This is the dark story of the economic trap. Working on the bridge is dangerous. Everyone knows it's dangerous, but the bridge pays $6 per day, $1 more than regular construction work. That extra dollar is $17 in today's money. For a family living paycheck to paycheck, that extra $17 per day changes everything. So when the Port Authority announces in 1927 that construction will begin, thousands of men apply. They line up outside the hiring office. They wait for hours. They beg for jobs. They know the risk. They know men will die, but they need that money. Ammann hires the best men, strong men, experienced men, men who have built bridges before. Men who know how to walk on steel beams 500 feet above the water. Men who aren't afraid of heights. But here's what Ammann doesn't say. Here's what the Port Authority doesn't advertise. Here's the dark story hidden in the fine print. If you die on the job, your family gets nothing. No pension, no life insurance, no compensation. In 1927, there are no worker safety laws. There is no OSHA. There is no requirement to pay families when workers die. Your family gets a funeral. That's it. Some workers know this. Some workers ask about it during the hiring process. The foreman tells them straight, if you die, you die. We'll send your body home, but we're not paying your widow. And the men still take the job, because that extra dollar per day means their children can eat. On January 12, 1927, the first crew arrives at Fort Lee. They look at the Hudson River. They look at the spot where the bridge will go. The river is 35 feet wide at this point. The water is deep, 160 feet deep in some places. The current is strong. The foreman explains the job. First, they'll build the foundations for the two towers. One tower on the New York side, one tower on the New Jersey side. The foundations have to go down to bedrock. On the New York side, that means digging 90 feet below the river. On the New Jersey side, it means digging 80 feet down. Then they'll build the towers. Steel beams, riveted together, rising higher and higher. 604 feet high. Then they'll string the cables. 4 massive cables, stretching from tower to tower across the river. Then they'll hang the roadway from the cables. Easy, right? The foreman doesn't mention the wind. He doesn't mention how steel beams swing in the wind 500 feet up. He doesn't mention how men slip when the steel is wet. He doesn't mention how safety ropes sometimes break. The first worker dies 4 months later. His name is John Ryan. He is 32 years old. He has a wife and 2 children in Brooklyn. On May 8, 1927, he is working on the foundation on the New York side. Something goes wrong. The equipment shifts. John falls into the excavation pit. He falls 90 feet. His body hits the bedrock. The foreman sends someone to Brooklyn to tell John's wife. She screams. She falls to her knees. She asks how much money the Port Authority will give her. The man tells her the truth. Nothing. John Ryan is buried on May 11, 1927. His funeral is attended by 40 people. Most of them are other bridge workers. They take off their work clothes. They put on their church clothes. They stand in the cemetery and wonder if they'll be next. The next day, they go back to work because they need that extra dollar. July 15, 1929. The North Tower, 600 feet above the Hudson River. Frank McCardle is 28 years old. He grew up in Hell's Kitchen, Manhattan. His father was a construction worker. His grandfather was a construction worker. Frank has been working construction since he was 16. He knows what he's doing. Today, Frank is riveting steel beams at the top of the North Tower. Riveting is hot work. You heat a steel rivet until it glows red. Then you put it through holes in 2 steel beams. Then you hammer it flat. The rivet cools and contracts, pulling the beams together tight. Frank has done this 1,000 times. Maybe 10,000 times. At 2:47 p.m., something goes wrong. Maybe Frank's foot slips. Maybe the steel beam shifts. Maybe the wind catches him off balance. Nobody sees exactly what happens. Frank falls. He falls 600 feet. It takes about 6 seconds. He hits the water of the Hudson River at 120 miles per hour. The impact kills him instantly. The other workers see him fall. They hear him scream. Then they hear the splash, then silence. The foreman blows a whistle. Work stops. Everyone climbs down from the tower. It takes 30 minutes to climb down. They stand at the bottom and wait. The Port Authority sends a boat to recover Frank's body. It takes 2 hours to find him in the river. Frank's body is brought to shore. His coworkers gather around. Some of them cry, some of them pray. Some of them just stand there silent. The foreman announces that work will resume tomorrow at 7 a.m. That night, the foreman goes to Hell's Kitchen. He knocks on a door. Frank's wife answers. She's 26 years old. She has a baby daughter who is 9 months old. The foreman tells her that Frank is dead. She doesn't scream. She doesn't cry. She just nods, like she's been expecting this. Like she's been waiting for this knock on the door since the day Frank took the job. "What do I get?" she asks. The foreman looks at his shoes. "We'll pay for the funeral," he says. That's it, that's it. Frank McCardle is buried on July 18, 1929. His funeral is attended by 150 people. Every bridge worker takes the day off. They carry Frank's coffin. They throw dirt on his grave. They go to the bar afterward and drink whiskey and promise they'll look after Frank's wife and daughter. Some of them keep that promise. Most of them forget. Meanwhile, up on the towers, the work continues. By the end of 1929, both towers are finished. They rise 604 feet above the water. They can be seen from miles away. Newspapers call them the gateway to New York. Tourists come to Fort Lee just to look at them. But the workers don't care about tourism. They care about the next step, the cables. Stringing the cables is the most dangerous part. Here's why. Each of the 4 main cables is made of 26,474 individual wires. The wires are thin, about as thick as a pencil. But when you bundle 26,474 of them together, you get a cable that's 3 feet thick. To build the cables, workers have to string the wires one at a time. They start on one tower. They attach a wire. They ride a little cart across to the other tower. They attach the wire there. Then they ride back. Then they do it again. 26,474 times for each cable. For 4 cables, the cart is called a spinning wheel. It hangs from a temporary rope stretched between the towers. When you ride the spinning wheel, you're 600 feet above the river. There are no walls, no seatbelt. Just you and the wire and the wind. On October 3, 1930, a worker named Otto Sondergaard is riding the spinning wheel. He's 35 years old. He's from Denmark. He came to America in 1920 looking for work. He found it here. Otto is halfway across the river when the rope breaks. Not the rope holding the spinning wheel. That rope is fine. The rope that breaks is Otto's safety rope. It's supposed to catch him if he falls. Otto doesn't fall. The spinning wheel is still attached. But now Otto is riding across the river with no safety rope. If anything goes wrong, he's dead. Otto knows this. Everyone watching knows this. The foreman on the New Jersey tower starts yelling, "Hold on, don't move, we'll pull you back." They start pulling the spinning wheel back to the New Jersey side. Slowly, very slowly. It takes 5 minutes. Otto holds on. His hands hurt. His arms hurt, but he holds on. When the spinning wheel reaches the New Jersey side, Otto climbs off. He collapses. He's shaking. He throws up. The foreman tells him to take the rest of the day off. The next morning, Otto comes back to work because he needs that extra dollar. But Otto is lucky. Other workers aren't. On April 12, 1931, a worker named Joseph McCaffrey is working on the same spinning wheel. His safety rope also breaks, but unlike Otto, Joseph loses his grip. He falls 600 feet into the Hudson River. His body is never found. The Port Authority sends a representative to Joseph's house in Queens. Joseph has a wife and 3 children. The youngest is 4 years old. The representative tells Joseph's wife what happened. Then he gives her $100. That's $2,000 in today's money. For the funeral, the representative says, "But there's no body," Joseph's wife says. "Then keep the money," the representative says. By April 1931, 13 workers have died. 13 families are grieving. 13 funerals have been held. The newspapers start writing stories. "Is this bridge cursed?" one headline asks. "The bridge of death," another one says. The Port Authority is worried, not about the workers, about the publicity. Bad publicity means delays. Delays mean the bridge opens late. Opening late means losing money. So the Port Authority makes a new rule. From now on, when a worker dies, the newspapers won't be told. No press releases. No announcements, just quiet funerals for quiet men. This is the dark story of silence. This is the dark story of making deaths invisible so that progress can continue. 2 more workers die before the bridge opens. Their names are Andrew Johnson and Michael Moran. Both fall from the towers. Both die on impact. Both are buried quietly. The total count, 15 dead. October 24, 1931, opening day. 20,000 people gather at the bridge. They come from New York. They come from New Jersey. They come from Pennsylvania and Connecticut and Massachusetts. They want to see history. The bridge is beautiful. The 2 towers shine in the sunlight. The 4 cables curve gracefully across the river. The roadway is smooth and wide. Everything is perfect. Governor Franklin D. Roosevelt of New York is here. He's in a wheelchair, he has polio, but he gives a speech anyway. He talks about progress. He talks about American ingenuity. He talks about how this bridge will bring prosperity to millions of people. He doesn't mention the 15 dead workers. Governor Morgan Larson of New Jersey also gives a speech. He talks about cooperation between states. He talks about how the bridge symbolizes unity. He talks about the future. He doesn't mention the 15 dead workers either. Then Ammann steps up to the microphone. Ammann is 52 years old now. This bridge is his masterpiece. This bridge is his legacy. This bridge will make him famous forever. Ammann's speech is short. He thanks the workers. He thanks the engineers. He thanks the Port Authority. He says this bridge represents the triumph of human achievement over natural obstacles. He mentions the workers who died. One sentence, that's it. We honor the memory of those who gave their lives during construction, Ammann says. 15 lives reduced to one sentence. At 3 p.m., the bridge officially opens. The first car drives across. It's a Cadillac carrying Governor Roosevelt. Behind the Cadillac, thousands of cars wait in line. Everyone wants to be among the first to cross. The toll is 50 cents. That's $10 in today's money. People pay it happily. They drive across slowly, looking at the view. From the bridge, you can see all of Manhattan. You can see the Statue of Liberty. You can see ships in the harbor. It's magnificent. Meanwhile, in Brooklyn, Frank McCardle's widow sits in her apartment. She hears about the bridge opening on the radio. She listens to Governor Roosevelt's speech. She listens to Governor Larson's speech. She listens to Ammann thank the workers. She turns off the radio. The next day, newspapers across America celebrate the bridge. World's greatest bridge opens, the New York Times announces. Engineering marvel connects two states, the Washington Post says. New wonder of the world, the Chicago Tribune proclaims. Some newspapers mention the workers who died, most don't. Life magazine runs a 6-page photo spread about the bridge. Beautiful pictures of the towers, beautiful pictures of the cables, beautiful pictures of cars driving across at sunset. On page 4, there's a small caption. 15 workers died during the 4-year construction period. That's it. 15 lives reduced to one sentence in a photo caption. But here's the thing. Here's the dark story of memory. Within a year, everyone forgets. By 1932, the George Washington Bridge is just another bridge. People drive across it every day. They don't think about how it was built. They don't think about who built it. They just drive. The bridge is a machine now. A machine that moves 10,000 cars per day. A machine that collects $5,000 per day in tolls. A machine that makes money for the Port Authority. And like any machine, it needs maintenance. Every day, workers inspect the cables. They check the steel beams for rust. They repaint sections that are fading. They replace worn-out parts. These workers are different from the men who built the bridge. They're not risking their lives 600 feet in the air. They're not riding spinning wheels across the river. They're just doing regular maintenance work. But here's what's interesting. Here's the dark story of wages. These maintenance workers make less money than the construction workers did. In 1932, a maintenance worker on the George Washington Bridge makes $4 per day. That's $2 less than what the construction workers made in 1927. Why? Because the job is safer. Because demand for jobs is higher. The Depression has started, and millions of people are unemployed. Because the Port Authority can pay less and still find workers. This is the dark story of the market. Dangerous jobs pay more. Safe jobs pay less. Your life has a price. By 1935, the bridge is carrying 20,000 cars per day. By 1940, it's 50,000 cars per day. By 1950, it's 100,000 cars per day. Every year, the Port Authority makes more money. In 1932, the bridge collects $1.8 million in tolls. That's $40 million in today's money. By 1942, it's collecting $3 million per year. By 1952, it's collecting $10 million per year. The Port Authority uses this money to build more bridges, more tunnels, more infrastructure. Every new project creates jobs. Every new project helps the economy. But here's the question nobody asks. Here's the dark story buried in the accounting books. How much money did the Port Authority pay to the families of the 15 dead workers? The answer, zero, not $1, not 1 cent. In 1932, a newspaper reporter asks the Port Authority about this. The Port Authority spokesman says, the workers knew the risks. They accepted the risks. We paid them fairly for their labor. We have no further obligation. The reporter asks, but what about their families? The spokesman says, the families are not our concern. This is printed in the newspaper. Most people read it and move on. Some people are angry. They write letters to the Port Authority. They demand compensation for the families. The Port Authority ignores the letters. Meanwhile, the bridge keeps running. The machine keeps working. The money keeps flowing. By 1940, the George Washington Bridge has carried 50 million cars. By 1950, it's 200 million. By 1960, it's 500 million. Every single one of those cars drives over the spot where John Ryan died, over the spot where Frank McCardle died, over the spot where Otto Sondergaard, Joseph McCaffrey, Andrew Johnson, Michael Moran, Charles Murphy, William Smith, Thomas Kelly, Peter Olson, James Sullivan, Edward Larson, Anthony DeLuca, Frank Kowalski, and Robert Henderson died. But nobody remembers their names. The bridge remembers, though. The steel remembers. The cables remember. The towers remember. And if you listen carefully, if you stand on the bridge at night when the traffic is quiet, you can almost hear them. 15 ghosts still working, still building, still falling, forever. The George Washington Bridge is 19 years old. It's the most famous bridge in America. More people cross it than any other bridge in the country. More cars, more trucks, more buses. Every single day, 100,000 vehicles cross it. That's one car every 0.86 seconds. If you stand on the New Jersey side and watch, you see an endless stream of metal. Cars bumper to bumper, taxis. Delivery trucks, buses full of tourists. Everyone going to New York, everyone coming from New York. The bridge is making money. Lots of money. In 1950, it collects $15 million in tolls. That's $190 million in today's money. The Port Authority uses this money to build the Lincoln Tunnel, the Holland Tunnel, the Bayonne Bridge, the Goethals Bridge. New York is becoming the infrastructure capital of the world, and it all started with the George Washington Bridge. Newspapers celebrate the bridge constantly. In 1951, Life magazine calls it America's Gateway. In 1952, Time magazine calls it the bridge that built New York. In 1953, the Saturday Evening Post runs a story titled The Miracle of the Hudson. Everyone loves the bridge, except the families of the 15 dead workers. In 1951, a reporter from the New York Daily News decides to do something unusual. He decides to find those families. He wants to know what happened to them. He wants to know if they're okay. It takes him 3 months, but he finds them. Some are still in New York, some have moved away, some have disappeared completely, but he finds most of them. He interviews Frank McCardle's widow. She's 48 years old now. Her daughter is 22. They live in a small apartment in Brooklyn. Frank's widow works as a seamstress. Her daughter works as a secretary. Together, they make $50 per week. That's $650 in today's money. The reporter asks, "Did the Port Authority ever give you any money?" "No," she says. "Did anyone help you?" "Some of Frank's coworkers gave me money for the funeral." After that, nothing. "Are you angry?" She thinks for a long time before answering. "I was angry. For years I was angry. But anger doesn't pay the rent, so I stopped being angry and started working." The reporter interviews John Ryan's widow. She's 55 years old now. Her children are grown. One is a plumber, one is a teacher. They both help support her, but it's hard. She works as a cleaning lady in an office building. "Do you ever cross the bridge?" the reporter asks. "No," she says, "never, I can't." "Why not?" "Because every time I see it, I see John falling." The reporter interviews Joseph McCaffrey's widow, the one whose husband's body was never found. She's 52 years old. She never remarried. Her 3 children are grown, but they all still live with her. None of them finished high school. They all work factory jobs. "What would you say to the people who cross the bridge every day?" the reporter asks. "I'd tell them to say a prayer, just a quick prayer, for the men who died, that's all. Just remember that someone died so they could save 20 minutes. The Daily News publishes these interviews on June 15, 1951. The headline is "The Forgotten Widows of the George Washington Bridge." The story causes a small controversy. Some people are sympathetic. They write letters to the Port Authority demanding compensation. Some people are dismissive. They say the widows should have saved money. They say the workers knew the risks. The Port Authority issues a statement. The workers were fairly compensated for their labor. The families received funeral assistance. "We fulfilled our legal obligations." Legally, the Port Authority is correct. In 1927, there were no laws requiring companies to compensate families when workers died. There was no workers' compensation system. There was no life insurance requirement. The Port Authority didn't have to pay anything. But here's the dark story of morality versus legality. Just because something is legal doesn't mean it's right. The controversy dies down after a few weeks. People forget about the widows. Life goes on. The bridge keeps running. Meanwhile, the bridge itself is changing. In 1946, the Port Authority decided the bridge needed more capacity. Too many cars, too much traffic, so they added a second deck. The original bridge has 6 lanes, 3 lanes going to New York, 3 lanes going to New Jersey. The second deck will add 6 more lanes, 12 lanes total. Twice as much capacity. Construction begins in 1958. It takes 4 years. And here's the interesting part. Here's the dark story of progress and learning. During the construction of the second deck, not a single worker dies. Not one. Why? Because by 1958 things have changed, laws have changed, safety standards have changed. Workers now have harnesses that actually work. They have safety nets, they have better equipment. And most importantly, there are consequences if workers die. Companies can be sued, companies can be fined, companies can be shut down, so the Port Authority is careful, very careful. They hire safety inspectors, they enforce rules. They fire workers who take stupid risks. The second deck opens on August 29, 1962. The bridge now carries 200,000 cars per day. It's the busiest bridge in the world. Everyone celebrates. Newspapers call it the bridge that never sleeps. Magazines call it the lifeline of New York. Politicians give speeches about American engineering and American progress. Nobody mentions that 15 men died building the first deck. Nobody mentions that 0 men died building the second deck. Nobody asks why this difference exists, but the answer is obvious. The difference exists because society decided that workers' lives matter. The difference exists because laws were passed. The difference exists because people demanded change. In other words, the 15 men who died building the first deck didn't have to die. Their deaths weren't inevitable. Their deaths weren't the price of progress. Their deaths were the result of a society that valued bridges more than the people who built them. By 1965, the bridge has carried 1 billion vehicles. 1 billion trips over 15 graves. The Port Authority celebrates with a ceremony. They put up a plaque on the New Jersey side. The plaque says, "In honor of the workers who built this bridge, 1927–1931. It doesn't mention that 15 of them died. It doesn't list their names, it's just a generic tribute to workers. Frank McCardle's widow hears about the plaque. She takes a bus to Fort Lee. She stands in front of the plaque and reads it. Then she walks away. She never goes back. The bridge is 44 years old. America is changing. The Vietnam War has ended. Watergate has happened. The economy is struggling. Gas prices are high. People are worried about the future. But the George Washington Bridge keeps running. 250,000 cars per day now. Every day, weekdays, weekends, holidays, the bridge never stops. The people crossing the bridge are different from the people who crossed in 1931. The original commuters, the people who witnessed the bridge's opening, are old now. Many are retired. Many are dead. The new commuters weren't born when the bridge opened. They don't remember the construction. They don't remember the 15 dead workers. To them, the bridge has always existed. It's just there like the sun or the rain. This is the dark story of generational forgetting. This is the dark story of how history disappears one funeral at a time. In 1975, a researcher at Rutgers University decides to write a book about the bridge. Her name is Dr. Patricia Morgan. She's a historian. She specializes in infrastructure and labor. Dr. Morgan spends 2 years researching. She reads old newspapers. She looks through Port Authority archives. She interviews retired workers. She tracks down the families of the dead workers. Most of the widows are dead now, but their children are alive. Dr. Morgan interviews them. She interviews Frank McCardle's daughter. She's 46 years old. She's a nurse. She has 3 children of her own. "Did your mother ever talk about your father?" Dr. Morgan asks. "Not much. It was too painful." "Did she ever cross the bridge?" "Never, not once in her entire life." "Do you cross the bridge?" The daughter hesitates. "Yes, for work." "But I don't like it." "Why not?" "Because I know my father's blood is in that steel." Dr. Morgan interviews John Ryan's son. He's 50 years old. He's a plumber, like his father wanted to be. "Do you ever think about your father when you cross the bridge?" Dr. Morgan asks. "Every single time," he says. "Every single time I think about him falling. I think about those 6 seconds while he was in the air. I think about what he was thinking. Was he scared? Was he thinking about me? Was he thinking about my mother? Have you ever been angry at the bridge? I used to be. When I was younger, I hated it. I hated seeing it. I hated hearing people talk about how beautiful it is. But now, I don't know. Now I just feel sad." Dr. Morgan interviews Otto Sondergaard's daughter. Otto survived the broken safety rope, but he died in 1955 from a heart attack. He was 60 years old. "Did your father ever talk about the bridge?" Dr. Morgan asks. "All the time. He had nightmares about it. Even 20 years later, he'd wake up screaming. My mother said he'd dream about hanging over the river, holding on, knowing his safety rope was broken." "Did he ever go back to the bridge?" "Once, in 1950. He wanted to see the second deck being built. He watched the workers for about 10 minutes. Then he threw up and went home. He never went back." Dr. Morgan's book is published in 1977. It's called The Price of Progress, Labor and Death on the George Washington Bridge. It's 400 pages long. It tells the story of the 15 dead workers. It lists their names. It describes their deaths. It interviews their families. The book sells 3,000 copies. Some newspapers review it, most ignore it. Within a year, it's out of print. Meanwhile, the bridge keeps running. 275,000 cars per day now. The tolls keep going up. In 1977, the toll is $1. That's $5 in today's money. By 1980, it's $1.50. By 1985, it's $2. The Port Authority is making more money than ever. In 1980, the bridge collects $75 million in tolls. That's $280 million in today's money. The Port Authority uses this money to maintain the bridge, to improve the bridge, to study whether they need to add a third deck. They also use it to pay their executives. In 1980, the executive director of the Port Authority makes $150,000 per year. That's $560,000 in today's money. That's 100 times more than what the bridge workers made in 1927. In 1981, the bridge turns 50 years old. The Port Authority plans a big celebration. They invite Governor Hugh Carey of New York. They invite Governor Brendan Byon of New Jersey. They invite the mayor of New York City, Ed Koch. They invite the mayor of Fort Lee. They plan speeches. They plan a parade. They plan fireworks. Dr. Patricia Morgan hears about the celebration. She writes a letter to the Port Authority. She suggests that they should honor the 15 dead workers at the ceremony. She suggests reading their names aloud. She suggests a moment of silence. The Port Authority thanks her for the suggestion but declines. They say the celebration should be forward-looking and positive. They say dwelling on the past would be inappropriate for such a joyful occasion. The 50th anniversary celebration happens on October 24, 1981. 10,000 people attend. Governor Carey gives a speech about infrastructure. Governor Byon gives a speech about cooperation. Mayor Koch gives a speech about New York. None of them mention the 15 dead workers. After the speeches, there's a parade. Classic cars from 1931 drive across the bridge. Bands play. Children wave flags. Everyone is happy. Meanwhile, in Brooklyn, Frank McCardle's daughter watches the celebration on TV. She's 52 years old now. She watches the politicians smile. She watches the crowd cheer. She watches the fireworks light up the sky. Then she turns off the TV. She thinks about her mother, who died in 1973. Her mother never crossed that bridge, not once in 42 years. Her mother never forgave the Port Authority. Her mother never forgave Othmar Ammann. Her mother never forgave a society that celebrated progress while ignoring the dead. Frank McCardle's daughter makes a decision. Tomorrow she'll drive to Fort Lee. She'll cross the bridge. For the first time in her life, she'll cross the bridge, not to celebrate, not to honor progress, but to remember her father. To remember the 15 men. To remember that some achievements come at a cost that can never be repaid. The next morning, she gets in her car. She drives to the bridge. She pays the toll. She drives across slowly. And as she crosses, she says a prayer. One name for every mile. John Ryan, Frank McCardle, Otto Sondergaard, Joseph McCaffrey, Andrew Johnson, Michael Moran, Charles Murphy, William Smith, Thomas Kelly, Peter Olson, James Sullivan, Edward Larson, Anthony DeLuca, Frank Kowalski, Robert Henderson. 15 names, 15 lives, 15 ghosts, still there, still watching, still waiting to be remembered. September 11, 2001, 8:46 a.m. A plane hits the North Tower of the World Trade Center. At 9:03 a.m., another plane hits the South Tower. America is under attack. The George Washington Bridge is immediately shut down. No cars in, no cars out. The Port Authority police close both sides. They're afraid the bridge might be a target. For the first time since 1931, the bridge is empty. No traffic, no trucks, no buses, just empty steel and silence. By noon, thousands of people are walking across the bridge. They're fleeing Manhattan. The subways are shut down. The tunnels are closed. The other bridges are closed. The George Washington Bridge is the only way out, so people walk, mothers carrying babies, old men with canes, office workers in business suits, teachers, doctors, lawyers, everyone is walking. They walk for hours. Some are crying. Some are in shock, some are covered in dust. They were near the towers when they fell. One woman stops halfway across the bridge. She's 35 years old. She's a teacher. She's covered in dust. She looks down at the Hudson River. She thinks about jumping. A Port Authority police officer sees her. He walks over. He talks to her quietly. After 10 minutes, she steps away from the edge. The officer escorts her to New Jersey. Later, the officer will say, "I thought about the people who built this bridge. I thought about the men who died. I wondered if they ever imagined a day like this. I wondered if they'd be proud that their bridge saved thousands of lives. Or if they'd be angry that they never got to walk across it themselves." The bridge reopens on September 12, 2001, But everything is different now. There are security checkpoints. There are police cars. There are random searches. The bridge is no longer just a bridge. It's a potential target. This new reality makes people think about the bridge differently. For the first time in decades, people notice it. They look at it. They appreciate it. They realize how important it is. And some people start asking questions. Questions about how it was built. Questions about who built it. Questions about the cost. In October 2001, a journalist named Michael Chen writes an article for the New York Times. The article is about the bridge's role on September 11, but at the end, Chen adds a historical note. He writes, "As we celebrate this bridge for saving lives during the September 11 attacks, we should remember that the bridge itself cost 15 lives during construction. These men, whose names most Americans don't know, died so that we could have this escape route. In a very real sense, they saved lives on September 11, 2001, 70 years after their deaths." The article includes all 15 names. It's the first time most of them have been printed in a major newspaper in 30 years. The article goes viral. Thousands of people read it. Some people are shocked. They never knew workers died. Some people are angry. They can't believe the Port Authority never compensated the families. Some people are defensive. They argue that all construction projects have casualties, and 15 deaths over 4 years is actually a low number. The Port Authority responds with a statement. "We honor the memory of all workers who contributed to this vital infrastructure. Their sacrifice is not forgotten. But here's the thing, it was forgotten. For 70 years, it was forgotten. If not for September 11, it would still be forgotten." In 2002, some of the dead workers' descendants decide to do something. They form a group called the Bridge Builders Memorial Committee. Their goal is simple. Get a proper memorial for the 15 workers. The committee is small, only about 20 people. Most are grandchildren of the dead workers. Some are great-grandchildren, but they're determined. They contact the Port Authority. They request a memorial. The Port Authority says they'll consider it. 1 year passes. Nothing happens. 2 years pass. Nothing happens. 3 years pass. The committee contacts the Port Authority again. The Port Authority says the request is under review. In 2006, the committee tries a different approach. They go to the media. They get a reporter from the Bergen Record to write about their efforts. The article runs on the front page. Families fight for bridge workers' memorial. The article puts pressure on the Port Authority. The Port Authority agrees to meet with the committee. At the meeting, the Port Authority makes an offer. They'll install a small plaque. The plaque will be on the New Jersey side, near the pedestrian walkway. It will list all 15 names. It will say, "In memory of the workers who died during construction of the George Washington Bridge, 1927–1931. The committee accepts. It's not perfect, but it's something. The plaque is installed on October 24, 2007, the 76th anniversary of the bridge's opening. About 50 people attend the ceremony. Most are family members. A few are politicians. A Port Authority representative gives a short speech. The speech is 3 minutes long. It thanks the workers for their sacrifice. It honors their memory. It reminds everyone that progress requires sacrifice. Then everyone goes home. The plaque is still there today. It's small, about 2 feet wide and 1 foot tall. Most people walking across the bridge never notice it. Most people driving across the bridge definitely don't see it, but it's there. And for the families, that matters. In 2008, Frank McCardle's granddaughter visits the plaque. She's 28 years old. She never met her grandfather. He died 23 years before she was born. But she grew up hearing stories about him. She stands in front of the plaque. She reads the names. She finds her grandfather's name, Frank McCardle. She starts crying, not because she's sad, because she's relieved. Finally, after 77 years, there's something physical that proves her grandfather existed. That proves he mattered. That proves his death wasn't meaningless. She takes a picture of the plaque. She posts it on Facebook with a caption. "My grandfather, Frank McCardle, died building this bridge in 1929. He was 28 years old. For 77 years, there was nothing to remember him by. Now there is. Thank you to everyone who made this happen." The post gets 500 likes. Dozens of people comment. Some share their own family stories. Some express sympathy. Some thank Frank McCardle for his sacrifice. And for a moment, just a brief moment, the 15 dead workers are remembered again. Then the moment passes. Life goes on. The bridge keeps running. 300,000 cars per day now, more than ever. Most of them drive right past the plaque without noticing. The bridge is 84 years old. It's been completely renovated twice. The steel has been replaced. The cables have been inspected and repaired. The roadway has been repaved dozens of times. In some ways, the bridge of 2015 is barely the same structure as the bridge of 1931, but the bones are the same. The towers are original. The foundations are original. The basic design is original, and somewhere in that steel, in those cables, in those foundations, somewhere in the physical structure of the bridge, are the last traces of the 15 dead workers. Their sweat is in the rust. Their blood is in the river. Their ghosts are in the wind. In 2015, a documentary filmmaker named Sarah Goldstein decides to make a film about the bridge, not just about its engineering or its history, about the workers. About the 15 men who died. Sarah spends 3 years on the project. She interviews every living descendant she can find. She tracks down old photographs. She gets access to Port Authority archives. She finds medical examiner reports describing the injuries that killed each worker. The details are brutal. John Ryan, multiple fractures of the skull, spine, pelvis, and legs. Death instantaneous from impact with bedrock. Frank McCardle, massive internal injuries from impact with water at high velocity, drowning a contributing factor. Death within minutes. Joseph McCaffrey, body not recovered. Presumed dead from fall of approximately 600 feet. Sarah also finds something unexpected. She finds letters. Letters from the workers to their families. Letters that were never mailed because the workers died before they could send them. One letter is from Charles Murphy to his wife. Charles died on August 3, 1930. He was 31 years old. The letter says, "Dear Mary, the work is hard but the pay is good. I'm putting away extra money every week. By Christmas we should have enough for a down payment on a house. The boys ask about me in your letters. Tell them I'm building a bridge. Tell them someday I'll take them across it and show them what I did. Tell them their father is doing something important, something that will last forever. I love you. I'll be home soon. Charles." Charles Murphy never made it home. He fell from the North Tower on August 3, 1930. His body was recovered from the Hudson River. He was buried in Queens. He never got to buy that house. He never got to take his boys across the bridge. Sarah's documentary is called The Bridge Builders. It premieres at the Tribeca Film Festival in 2018. It wins the Audience Award for Best Documentary. The film gets picked up by PBS. It airs on November 15, 2018. 3 million people watch it. Suddenly, people care about the 15 dead workers. Suddenly, their names are everywhere. Newspapers write articles. Websites publish listicles. 15 things you didn't know about the George Washington Bridge. Podcasts discuss the ethics of worker safety. The Port Authority faces renewed pressure. People demand more than just a plaque. They demand a proper memorial. They demand compensation for the families, even though the families are now 3 and 4 generations removed from the original widows. The Port Authority resists. They argue that they've already installed a plaque. They argue that the workers were fairly compensated according to the laws of their time. They argue that it's impossible to compensate families who are now 3 or 4 generations removed. But the pressure keeps building. In 2019, the New Jersey state legislature passes a resolution honoring the 15 workers. In 2020, the New York state legislature does the same. In 2021, 90 years after the bridge opened, the Port Authority finally agrees to create a proper memorial. Not just a plaque, a real memorial. The memorial is designed by a sculptor named James Liu. It's located on the New Jersey side, near the base of the bridge. It consists of 15 steel beams standing upright. Each beam is 10 feet tall. Each beam has a worker's name engraved on it. The beams are arranged in a circle. In the center is a bronze plaque with a quote from one of Charles Murphy's letters. Tell them their father is doing something important, something that will last forever. The memorial is dedicated on October 24, 2021, 90 years to the day after the bridge opened. About 200 people attend. Most are descendants of the workers. Some are politicians. Some are Port Authority officials. The Port Authority executive director gives a speech. He says, "Today we finally do what should have been done 90 years ago. We honor these men. We remember their names. We acknowledge their sacrifice. We admit that progress sometimes comes at too high a price." It's a good speech. It's a sincere speech. But here's the dark story of timing. It took 90 years. It took thousands of newspaper articles. It took a documentary film. It took public pressure. It took state legislature resolutions. Why did it take so long? Why wasn't this done in 1931, or 1941, or 1951? The answer is simple: because nobody cared, because the workers were poor, because the workers were replaceable, because the bridge was more important than the people who built it. After the ceremony, the families gather around the memorial. They touch the steel beams. They read the names. Some of them cry. Some of them take pictures. Some of them just stand there silent. One woman, a great-granddaughter of John Ryan, says to a reporter, "My great-grandfather died in 1927. I was born in 1995. I never met him. I never even met my grandmother because she died before I was born, but I grew up hearing stories. And now, finally, there's something real, something physical, something that proves he existed. The memorial stands there today. Most people driving across the bridge don't know it exists. Most people walking across the bridge never see it. It's off the main path, easy to miss. But it's there. 15 steel beams, 15 names, 15 lives that mattered. Finally acknowledged, finally honored, finally remembered, 90 years too late. Today, right now, this moment, the George Washington Bridge is 93 years old. It carries 300,000 cars per day. That's 109 million cars per year. Since opening in 1931, more than 10 billion vehicles have crossed it. 10 billion trips over 15 graves. If you drive across the bridge today, here's what you see: traffic. Lots of traffic, bumper to bumper during rush hour. The toll is $17 if you don't have EZ Pass. The drive takes about 5 minutes if there's no traffic, about 30 minutes if there is. Here's what you don't see: the memorial, the 15 steel beams with the 15 names. Unless you specifically know where it is and specifically go looking for it, you'll never notice it. Here's what else you don't see: the workers, the men and women who maintain the bridge every single day. They're out there early in the morning before rush hour starts. They're out there late at night after rush hour ends. They repaint steel, they check cables, they fix potholes, they clear debris. Nobody notices them either. In 2024, a bridge maintenance worker makes about $35 per hour. That's $72,800 per year. It's a good wage, better than what most Americans make, but it's dangerous work. You're working high above the water. You're working in all weather. You're working around traffic going 60 miles per hour. In the past 93 years, 3 maintenance workers have died on the George Washington Bridge, not during construction. During routine maintenance, one died in 1962. He was repainting the South Tower when his safety harness broke. He fell 400 feet. One died in 1989. He was inspecting cables when a gust of wind knocked him off balance. He fell into the river. One died in 2011. He was fixing a pothole when a car swerved and hit him. 3 more deaths, 3 more families grieving. 3 more funerals. The Port Authority paid the families, not because they wanted to, because the law required it. By 1962, workers' compensation laws existed. By 1989, OSHA regulations existed. By 2011, workplace safety was taken seriously. Progress, finally. But here's the dark story of numbers. 18 workers have died on this bridge, 15 during construction, 3 during maintenance, 18 total. And 10 billion vehicles have crossed. 10 billion trips. That's 1 death for every 555 million trips. Is that a good ratio? Is that acceptable? Is 18 deaths over 93 years a reasonable price for the world's busiest bridge? That's not a question with an easy answer. Today, if you want to visit the memorial, here's how you do it. You drive to Fort Lee, New Jersey. You find the parking lot near the bridge. You walk to the pedestrian path. You walk about 200 yards. You look to your right. There it is, 15 steel beams in a circle. On an average day, maybe 5 or 10 people visit the memorial, sometimes more, sometimes 0. But here's what's interesting. The people who do visit, the people who make the effort to find it, they're changed by it. They stand there, they read the names, they think about the lives behind those names. Some people leave flowers, some people leave notes. One note left in 2023 says, "Thank you for building this bridge. Thank you for sacrificing everything so that millions of people could cross the river. You are not forgotten." Another note left in 2024 says, "I cross this bridge every day for work. Today, for the first time, I thought about the men who died building it. I'm sorry I never thought about you before. I'm thinking about you now." These notes pile up. The Port Authority clears them away periodically, but more notes always appear. The memorial has become something unexpected. It's become a place where people confront the cost of progress. It's become a place where people realize that infrastructure isn't free. It's become a place where people remember that every bridge, every tunnel, every road, every building, everything around us was built by real people who took real risks. In 2022, a high school in Fort Lee started a tradition. Every year on October 24, the anniversary of the bridge's opening, the entire senior class visits the memorial. They stand there for 15 minutes. 1 minute for each worker. They don't talk, they just stand and think. One student, after visiting in 2023, wrote in an essay, "I always took the bridge for granted. I drove across it 100 times. I never thought about where it came from, but now I can't cross it without thinking about those 15 men. I can't cross it without wondering if they had families, if they had dreams, if they were scared when they fell." That's the power of memory. That's the power of naming the dead. That's the power of forcing people to confront the human cost of their convenience. But here's the sad part. Here's the dark story of attention spans. Most people still don't know. Most people crossing the bridge today have never heard of John Ryan, Frank McCardle, Otto Sondergaard, Joseph McCaffrey, Andrew Johnson, Michael Morin, Charles Murphy, William Smith, Thomas Kelly, Peter Olson, James Sullivan, Edward Larson, Anthony DeLuca, Frank Kowalski, or Robert Henderson. Most people never will. The bridge is too busy. The traffic is too heavy. People are in too much of a hurry. They have places to go, things to do. They don't have time to think about dead workers from 93 years ago. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's how progress works. Maybe you can't build a better future if you're constantly looking backward. But maybe, just maybe, we should look backward sometimes. Just for a moment. Just long enough to say, thank you for building this. Thank you for sacrificing. Thank you for making my life easier. Just long enough to remember their names. Let's talk about what it was actually like to build the George Washington Bridge. Not from an engineer's perspective, not from a politician's perspective, from a worker's perspective. You wake up at 5 a.m., it's still dark outside. You eat breakfast, eggs and bread if you're lucky, just bread if you're not. You kiss your wife. You try not to wake your children. You walk to the ferry terminal. You take the ferry across the Hudson River. You walk from the ferry to the construction site. You arrive at 6:30 a.m. You put on your work clothes, thick canvas pants, a heavy shirt, leather gloves, steel-toed boots, and a hard hat, except there are no hard hats in 1927. That safety equipment won't be invented until the 1930s. So you just wear a regular cap and hope nothing falls on your head. You climb. That's most of your job. Climbing, you climb ladders. You climb scaffolding. You climb steel beams. You climb higher and higher and higher. 100 feet. 200 feet, 300 feet, 400 feet, 500 feet, 600 feet. At 600 feet, the wind is strong. It's always windy up there. Even on calm days, there's wind. The steel sways, not a lot. Just a little, just enough to remind you that you're standing on something that's not quite solid. You work for 10 hours, from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. No lunch break, you eat while you work. No bathroom breaks, you climb down if you have to go, which takes 20 minutes, so most workers just hold it. You rivet steel beams. That means you heat a rivet until it glows red. Then you put it through holes in 2 beams. Then you hammer it flat. The riveting gun is loud. By the end of the day, your ears are ringing. After a few years, you'll be partially deaf. You're working next to other men. Most of them are immigrants. Irish, Italian, Polish, German, Danish. Nobody speaks the same language. You communicate with hand signals and pointing. Some of these men are your friends. You eat lunch together. You joke together. You help each other when the work is hard. And then one day, one of them falls. Maybe he slips, maybe the steel shifts. Maybe he just gets tired and loses his grip. You watch him fall. You hear him scream. You hear the splash when he hits the water, or the thud when he hits the ground, or the crunch when he hits the steel beams below. Then the whistle blows. Everyone climbs down. You stand around the body. Nobody says anything. What is there to say? The foreman tells everyone to go home early. You climb down. You take the ferry, you walk home. Your wife asks why you're home early. You tell her what happened. She cries, not because she knew the dead worker, because she's terrified it'll be you next. The next morning, you go back to work. Because you need that $6 per day. Because your family needs to eat. Because if you quit, someone else will take your job. This happened 15 times during the construction of the George Washington Bridge. 15 times workers watched their coworkers die. 15 times workers went home and told their wives what happened. 15 times wives cried and begged their husbands to quit. 15 times husbands went back to work the next day. Why would anyone do this? The answer is complicated. It's not just about money. It's about pride. It's about building something that will last. It's about being part of history. In 1929, a newspaper reporter interviewed bridge workers. He asked them why they took such a dangerous job. Here's what they said. One worker, "My children will cross this bridge someday. They'll look at it and think about their father. They'll be proud." Another worker, "This bridge will be here for 100 years, maybe more. Long after I'm dead, people will use it. That means something." Another worker, "It's dangerous, yes. But what job isn't? At least this job pays well. At least this job matters." Another worker, "I'm not afraid of heights. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of living a life that doesn't matter. This bridge matters." These weren't stupid men. These weren't reckless men. These were men who understood the risk and chose to take it anyway, because they believed the bridge was worth it. But here's the question. Here's the dark story buried in those interviews. Were they right? Was the bridge worth it? If you could go back in time and tell John Ryan that he would die on May 8, 1927, would he still take the job? If you could tell Frank McCardle that he would fall 600 feet on July 15, 1929, would he still climb that tower? Maybe they would, because the alternative, poverty, hunger, watching their children suffer, was worse than the risk of death. That's the dark story of economic desperation. When you're poor, you don't have good choices. You only have bad choices. You choose the bad choice that gives you the best chance of survival. The workers knew this, the foremen knew this, the engineers knew this, the port authority knew this, and they all decided it was acceptable. They all decided that progress required sacrifice. They all decided that some lives matter less than others. That's the darkest story of all. But here's the thing, the workers didn't see it that way. The workers didn't think of themselves as victims. They thought of themselves as builders, as creators, as men doing important work. And they were right, the bridge is important. The bridge matters. The bridge has carried 10 billion vehicles. The bridge has saved countless hours of commuting time. The bridge has enabled commerce and connection and community. The bridge was worth building. But was it worth 15 lives? That's a question each person has to answer for themselves. 93 years after the bridge opened, America is different now. The economy is different. Worker safety laws exist. OSHA exists. Unions exist. If a worker dies on a construction site today, there are investigations. There are lawsuits. There are consequences. Things are better, undeniably better. But construction work is still dangerous. In 2023, 5,486 construction workers died on the job in America. That's 15 workers per day. One worker every 96 minutes. 15 per day. The same number of workers who died building the entire George Washington Bridge now die every single day in America. Some things have changed, some things haven't. In 2024, if you talk to construction workers, they'll tell you that the job is safer than it used to be. They wear harnesses, they have safety nets, they have regulations, but they'll also tell you that accidents still happen. Equipment still fails, people still fall, workers still die. The difference is what happens afterward. In 1927, when John Ryan died, his wife got nothing. In 2024, when a construction worker dies, his family gets workers' compensation. They get life insurance. They get survivor benefits. They get something. It's not enough. No amount of money can replace a husband or father. But it's something, it's better than nothing. This is the dark story of progress. Things get better slowly, painfully, one death at a time, one law at a time, one regulation at a time. The George Washington Bridge is part of that story. The 15 dead workers are part of that story. Their deaths contributed to the push for worker safety laws. Their deaths helped create OSHA. Their deaths helped make construction work safer. But here's the uncomfortable question. Did they have to die for that progress to happen? Or would society have protected workers even without those deaths? Nobody knows. History doesn't have control groups. We can't know what would have happened if those 15 men had lived. What we do know is this: their deaths mattered, not because they were meaningful, not because they served a purpose, but because they forced people to confront the cost of progress. In 2023, a group of scholars at Columbia University published a study about the George Washington Bridge. The study looked at workplace fatalities during major infrastructure projects. The study found that the George Washington Bridge had a relatively low fatality rate. 15 deaths over 4 years is less than many similar projects from that era. The Brooklyn Bridge, for comparison, killed at least 20 workers over 13 years. The Hoover Dam killed 96 workers over 5 years. The Panama Canal killed over 5,000 workers over 10 years. By those standards, the George Washington Bridge was relatively safe. But does that matter? Does it matter that only 15 workers died instead of 20 or 30? To the families of those 15 workers, it doesn't matter at all. To them, one death is too many. This is the dark story of statistics. Numbers help us understand the scale of tragedy, but numbers also make us forget that each death represents a real person with a name, a face, a family. Dreams, fears, hopes. 15 isn't just a number. 15 is John, Frank, Otto, Joseph, Andrew, Michael, Charles, William, Thomas, Peter, James, Edward, Anthony, Frank, and Robert. 15 is 15 families destroyed. 15 wives who became widows. 15 sets of children who grew up without fathers. Today, when people debate infrastructure projects, they still ask the same questions. How much will it cost? How long will it take? Will it create jobs? Will it improve the economy? But here's the question we should also ask. How many people will die building this? And is there any way to build it without anyone dying? In 2024, we know the answer to the second question is yes. Yes, we can build bridges without anyone dying. We have the technology. We have the safety equipment. We have the regulations. It's possible. It's been proven. The second deck of the George Washington Bridge was built with 0 deaths. It can be done. So why does it still happen? Why do 15 construction workers still die every day in America? The answer is complicated. Sometimes it's negligence. Sometimes it's equipment failure. Sometimes it's just bad luck. But often, too often, it's because companies cut corners, because safety equipment is expensive, because training takes time, Because regulations slow down projects. Because even in 2024, we still value progress over people. That's the reckoning. That's the lesson of the George Washington Bridge. That's the dark story we need to confront. We built an incredible bridge, a bridge that has served millions of people for 93 years, a bridge that will probably serve millions more for another 93 years. That's an achievement. That's something to celebrate. But it cost 15 lives, lives that didn't have to be lost, lives that were sacrificed because society decided the bridge was more important than the people building it. Is that acceptable? Is that the world we want to live in? In 2024, descendants of the 15 dead workers continue to visit the memorial. They bring their children, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren. They tell the stories. They keep the memory alive. One descendant, a great-great-granddaughter of Peter Olson, says, "I never met my great-great-grandfather. He died almost 100 years ago, but I know his story. I know he was brave. I know he worked hard. I know he died building something important, and I know that his death mattered, not because it was meaningful, but because it should never have happened." That's the reckoning. That's what we owe the 15 dead workers, not just memory. Not just a memorial, but a commitment to do better, a commitment to value people over progress, a commitment to never again say that any achievement is worth a human life. The George Washington Bridge will stand for another 100 years, maybe more. Long after we're all dead, people will drive across it. They'll marvel at it. They'll take it for granted. But somewhere in that steel, in those cables, in those foundations, the ghosts of 15 workers will remain, watching, waiting, hoping that we learn the lesson, hoping that we finally understand the true cost of progress. October 24, 2031, the George Washington Bridge turns 100 years old. Imagine the celebration. Imagine the speeches. Imagine the politicians praising American engineering. Imagine the historians explaining the bridge's significance. Imagine the tourists taking photos. Imagine the fireworks over the Hudson River. Now imagine something else. Imagine if, at that celebration, someone read the names. All 15 names, slowly, out loud, so everyone could hear. John Ryan, Frank McCardle, Otto Sondergaard, Joseph McCaffrey, Andrew Johnson, Michael Morin, Charles Murphy, William Smith, Thomas Kelly, Peter Olson, James Sullivan, Edward Larson, Anthony DeLuca, Frank Kowalski, Robert Henderson. Imagine if, after each name, someone told a story. John Ryan had a wife and 2 children. Frank McCardle was 28 years old when he fell. Otto Sondergaard survived a broken safety rope, but had nightmares for the rest of his life. Joseph McCaffrey's body was never found. Imagine if the celebration included a moment of silence, 15 minutes. 1 minute for each worker, 15 minutes where nobody spoke, nobody moved. Everyone just stood there and thought about the cost. Would people be willing to do that? Would people be willing to confront the dark story of the bridge they celebrate? Would people be willing to admit that progress sometimes comes at too high a price? Or would they prefer to skip that part, to focus on the achievement? To celebrate the triumph without acknowledging the tragedy? That's the test. That's the measure of how much we've learned. That's how we'll know if the 15 workers died for something or for nothing. Here's the lesson of the George Washington Bridge. Here's what we should learn from this dark story. Lesson 1. Progress is not free. Every bridge, every building, every road, every piece of infrastructure around us was built by real people who took real risks. Some of those people died. We owe them our memory. We owe them our gratitude. We owe them the dignity of speaking their names. Lesson 2. Laws matter. In 1927, there were no worker safety laws. Companies could let workers die without consequences. Today, there are laws. Those laws exist because people fought for them. Those laws exist because workers died and other people decided that was unacceptable. Those laws save lives every single day. We must protect those laws. We must strengthen those laws. We must never go back to a time when companies could sacrifice workers for profit. Lesson 3. Memory matters. The 15 workers who died on the George Washington Bridge were forgotten for decades. Their names disappeared. Their stories vanished. It took 90 years for anyone to build a proper memorial. That's too long. Way too long. We must do better. We must remember the people who built our world. We must tell their stories. We must say their names. Lesson 4. Every life matters. It doesn't matter if 15 deaths is a low number compared to other projects. It doesn't matter if the bridge has served billions of people. It doesn't matter if the bridge is the busiest in the world. 15 lives were lost. 15 families were destroyed. That's not a statistic. That's not a number. That's a tragedy. And we must treat it as such. Present reality. Today, right now, 300,000 cars are crossing the George Washington Bridge. Maybe you're in one of them. Maybe you've crossed it 100 times. Maybe you'll cross it tomorrow. The next time you do, think about the 15 workers, just for a moment, just long enough to say their names in your head, just long enough to acknowledge that your convenience came at a cost. That's all we're asking. Just remember. Just for a moment, future question. In 2031, when the bridge turns 100, will anyone remember the 15 dead workers? Will their names be spoken? Will their stories be told? Or will they be forgotten again? That depends on us. That depends on whether we choose to remember. That depends on whether we choose to confront the dark story of our infrastructure. That depends on whether we decide that progress is only worth celebrating if we acknowledge its cost. In 2031, some of the descendants of the 15 workers will still be alive. They'll be old, in their 70s, 80s, maybe 90s. They'll be the last generation with a direct connection to the men who died. After them, the memory will fade even more. After them, the 15 workers will be just names on a memorial that nobody visits, unless we decide differently, unless we decide to keep the memory alive, unless we decide that some stories are too important to forget. Human echo. In 2023, a woman named Margaret Ryan died in Brooklyn. She was 96 years old. She was John Ryan's daughter, the daughter who was 2 years old when her father fell 600 feet from the North Tower on May 8, 1927. Margaret spent her entire life knowing that her father died building a bridge. She crossed that bridge only twice in her life. Once in 1950, when her mother finally agreed to drive across it. Once in 2007, when the memorial was dedicated. Both times she cried. Before Margaret died, she gave an interview to a local newspaper. The reporter asked her what she wanted people to know about her father. Margaret said, "I want people to know he was real. He wasn't just a number. He wasn't just a statistic. He was my father. He had a name, he had a face, he had dreams, and he died doing something he thought was important. I want people to remember that." That's the human echo. That's the voice calling across 93 years. That's the daughter of a dead worker asking us, begging us to remember. Will we? Final line. The George Washington Bridge connects New York and New Jersey over the Hudson River. But it also connects us to 15 men who died building it. Every time we cross that bridge, we're crossing over their graves. Every time we take that bridge for granted, we're forgetting their sacrifice. Every time we celebrate the bridge without speaking their names, we're saying that progress is more important than people. That's the dark story. That's the story we need to remember. That's the story that should make us think twice before we celebrate the next great achievement without asking, what did it cost? Who paid the price? And did they have to die for this to exist? The George Washington Bridge is a marvel. It's a triumph, it's an achievement, but it's also a cemetery, a workplace massacre, a reminder that the world we live in was built by people who sacrificed everything, sometimes their lives, so that we could have convenience. The least we can do is remember their names. If you ever cross the George Washington Bridge, take a moment, just one moment. Say their names: John Ryan, Frank McCardle, Otto Sondergaard, Joseph McCaffrey, Andrew Johnson, Michael Moran, Charles Murphy, William Smith, Thomas Kelly, Peter Olson, James Sullivan, Edward Larson, Anthony DeLuca, Frank Kowalski, Robert Henderson. 15 names, 15 lives. 15 ghosts who built the bridge you're driving across. Remember them, honor them, make sure their deaths weren't meaningless. That's all we can do now. That's all they would ask, just remember.